Okay, so right now there are 4,000 U.S. sailors and soldiers headed towards the coast of Venezuela. They're in gunboats. They are sent there in helicopters. They include sailors and 2,200 U.S. Marines. Now, the reason that the US government is giving for sending these ships over there is for drug enforcement. The US government says that the government of Venezuela is in deep with drug cartels in order to finance the government of Nicolas Maduro, which Caroline Levitt and many others continue to assert to the press is a not only the illegitimate government of Venezuela due to the sham elections that they had very recently, where Joe Biden was making attempts to see if, well, maybe we could start working with Venezuela if they had a legitimate election. None of that ever saw any fruition. Instead, we had a sham election. Nicolas Maduro is still in power, and there were brutal crackdowns around the people who protested how the election was, well, not 100% of the most credibility. But all of that didn't lead to a change in the government. Nicolas Maduro is still in power, and his grip on power has not slipped extremely when it comes to control of institutions or control of the armed forces. When it comes to holding the positions of power in society, it hasn't slipped. When it comes to public sentiment, yeah, his base has shrunk significantly. But he still holds control of the different institutions of power. So, they send these boats down there. They're happening. It's happening right now. They haven't reached the coast of Venezuela, but they're on path to Venezuela. And the government of Nicolas Maduro has reacted to the statement of them saying, hey, we're going to send these ships down there, saying there's a possibility of U.S. invasion. People need to rally around the flag. This is not a moment for people to be divided. We need to show unity as a nation. Please, everybody, go join your local Maduro militia. Go join the local militia to defend Venezuela against possible U.S. incursions. Mind you, the government of Nicolas Maduro has been threatening to invade Guyana, their neighbor to their east, for months. I mean, going on years now, but this rhetoric had escalated around the election and continues to stay in public consciousness. Now, while this was something, a territorial dispute that does have historical origins, it has recently escalated in public consciousness as Guyana has continued to increase its tax revenue and increase its GDP from recent oil and gas investments from Western companies, as more and more natural energy resources are discovered around Guyana and around the coast. This has angered the government of Venezuela because they view those resources as theirs, and so that has increased the pressure. But this type of territorial ambition, while they hammer a big chest on their, hey, we're gonna hammer a big chest. They hammered their chest quite hard on invading their neighbor. When it comes to 4,000 U.S. soldiers on their shores, the government of Maduro is nervous. Now, I'm not trying to say that it's ridiculous that they're nervous about this. I'm not sympathetic to Maduro, but 4,000 U.S. soldiers is not enough to overthrow the government. And while the government of Donald Trump is asked, like, hey, are you going to overthrow the government? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? And most of the reactions has been, oh, everything's on the table, but this is just a drug enforcement operation. This is just a drug enforcement operation. But experts agree that the amount of forces that are being sent down to the coastline of Venezuela is not of such a size that you would need for a drug enforcement operation. It's much larger. But despite that, the government says it's for nothing else but drug enforcement. So what I think is likely is that this is a type of posturing. That this is the government going down there, making statements about Maduro being a narco terrorist and the illegitimate leader, flexing their muscles in the region, because Trump has not sent the media groundwork for an invasion of Venezuela. There's been no big public media lead up into this. While there is a section of his base that definitely does not like the government of Nicolas Maduro. Most Americans don't like Nicolas Maduro. The American public has not been prepped for this intervention. And I mean, it was already hard enough for them to sell the bombing of Iran. Is this going to be viewed any differently? Not to mention, there are hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans in the United States right now that the Trump administration wants to end legal protections for and seemingly deport. If they start a war with Venezuela, how do we not know that the amount of displaced people will not increase from the overthrow or attempted overthrow of Nicolas Maduro, especially if it doesn't go to plan? Especially if they are not willing to attribute ground forces and they expect Colombian mercenaries, some private military company, some third party, some other group, some Bay of Pigs style operation to do the dirty work, as Trump wants to clean his hands of American bodies based off of foreign interventionism as a man who campaigned as the no new wars, I'm the peace man, as he continues to fail to get peace in Ukraine. It would probably not be a fantastic look. So I don't think that they're going to put troops on the ground. I think that there still would be concerned about more people being displaced, though people could make an argument that until Maduro goes, many people will probably never, ever, ever return because they have no interest in what type of repression they could see upon returning to Maduro's Venezuela. But Maduro saying that they cannot invade, that they don't have significant enough forces, that Venezuela has deployed patrol boats along the coastline, that Venezuela has drones ready to defend the country, and that more people are joining the nation's militias ready to defend and fight against U.S. Marines should they hit the shores of Venezuela. Now, look, again, I don't think that they're going to do that, even though Trump's not taking it off the table, and Trump has tried to stretch his authority to fight narco organizations and narco organizations tied with governments by designating them terrorist groups. By designating them terrorist groups, he is giving him more authority that he could use from the AUMF, the Authorization for Use of Military Force. This is the authority by which the President of the United States has been able to do strikes, say, on Soleimani, even though he's not directly linked with Al-Qaeda or the forces that attacked us on 9/11, since you can say that he's tied to some organization that the United States designates as a terrorist group, say the IRGC or otherwise, then we can strike them as part of the AUMF authorized by Congress. Is that stretching the authority of the AUMF? Absolutely. Was that the original intention of the AUMF when first authorized? Debatable. I would say no. But I certainly could say, and I don't think anyone could debate, that when the AUMF was first put into place, it being used to attack cartels south of the United States, completely unrelated to religious extremism or the attacks on September 11th. It's anybody asserting that that was what was first intended when the AUMF was put into place is on another planet, is off their rocker, is absolutely insane. But by designating these groups terrorist organizations, that gives the president more authority. And so that authority that he holds, he can wave around like a big stick. And even if he doesn't have enough forces to invade Venezuela, maybe that new legal authority or assumed legal authority that they're waving around like a big stick, plus the forces in the region, might be enough in their mind to try to pressure concessions off of Maduro. Maybe there's a hope that the appearance of this type of pressure will rally the Venezuelan opposition. That would not be terribly surprising to me. Not that that would succeed. If it succeeded, just putting some U.S. sailors and Marines off the shore of Venezuela and inspiring the people to overthrow the government, that would surprise me tremendously because I don't think that's going to work. But I could see the Trump administration believing that, especially when you consider the type of opposition figures and others that are in communication with the Trump campaign. There's also the possibility of a different effect of, instead of people looking at this and seeing these deploys of U.S. sailors and Marines saying, hey, I see these Marines, I see these sailors, this makes me want to overthrow the government. Some could say, this is an American business. This is not a business of the Yanks. As much as I don't like Maduro, I don't like American occupation, or I don't like American forces, or I don't like the idea of the United States choosing their next government even more. Exactly how this will be interpreted by the opposition in Venezuela, I do not know. I know that the hard opposition, some of them might support this, but when it comes to the people that Maduro would need to lose or piss off so significantly to get them on the streets, how they're going to interpret this, I don't know if they're going to interpret it as a signal to go, especially if everybody and their mama knows that 4,000 U.S. soldiers is not going to be enough to topple the Maduro regime. There would need to be a separate significant force. Whether or not you could cobble together some combination of opposition militias, Colombian mercenaries, U.S. military contractors, and whoever, in order to get some sort of ground force that could be then supported by American air power and naval power, I don't know. I really can't tell you. But what I can tell you is the success of those operations don't have a good track record when it comes to Venezuela. They don't have a great track record when it comes to Cuba. It's not a completely unsuccessful track record, period, but it could come with a very high likelihood of failure. And considering what happened during the first Trump administration, when it comes to private military contractors seeing what they could do when it comes to Venezuela toppling, I don't know if the Trump administration wants another scandal like that, especially if it's going to be bigger and include in any manner actual U.S. forces. Either way, I think this does pressure the Maduro government differently than how the Biden administration did. The Biden administration did not leverage the AUMF or terrorist designations to scare Venezuela. They did not really leave the possibility of a Venezuela intervention on the table. The Biden administration tried to work with them somewhat during the elections. This administration, Trump administration, has not shown any willingness to want to work with them. Not, I don't think, over democratic principles, but based off the idea that their base doesn't like Maduro, the opposition that they're in bed with doesn't like Maduro, and Maduro is not working in U.S. interests and what the administration deems to be U.S. interests. And so I think that there is a possibility of them bringing down more U.S. power, or at least a fear of more U.S. power. And I think one example of them doing this was the doubling of Maduro's bounty from $25 million to $50 million, a gigantic sum of money to offer for somebody's head. And so they're trying to build up the pressure. Whether it's going to succeed in getting any concessions, I'm much more skeptical about. Until Maduro's fingers start to slip when it comes to the institutions of power and people get on the street, I don't think that Maduro is going to budge. And I don't think that American warships are going to be the thing that ultimately gets him to budge. Or if it's going to be American forces, it has to be an American force of enough size to actually intimidate him, not one of enough size to make him pay attention and grow suspicion and be paranoid, but not enough to actually do something. Because even if you don't plan to do something, you need to have enough to threaten to do something. So far, I think this is nothing more than posturing.